Magic circles are awesome, and I have a scary suspicion they're hugely underutilized in most people's spiritual practices. Be honest with yourself. Whenever you go into meditation, pull tarot cards, do a divination sesh, or just straight up do energy work, do you cast a circle at all? Do you set the space to match your intentions and create an environment that speeds up your manifestations? Do you intentionally create a space that protects you from outside or egotistical influences? Or do you just jump right in because you want to get your stuff done? No judgment, but if something's worth doing, isn't it worth doing so properly? If you're committed to a magical or spiritual practice, you should be putting the effort in to maintain a healthy and balanced environment that supports it. And believe me, you are more than powerful enough to create that. And stay tuned till the end of the video and we'll give you an easy step-by-step walkthrough of casting one of your very own. If you want a digital environment where you can practice this kind of thing with other magicians and learn how to strengthen, empower, and even more specific, then we have an entire course dedicated to magic on Spirit Mysteries. We'll take you through the casting, charging, and dispelling process personally and help you troubleshoot anything. But for now, let's step inside a magic circle and explore the history, use, and purpose so you can make it a part of your practice and watch just how clear your environment becomes. First off, what even is a magic circle? It's actually kind of a misleading term because not all practices even make the thing a circle. You can have circle magic circles, the most common, square magic circles, 3D megadome circles, or even a whole host of sacred geometries if you can conjure it up in your magical imagination. At its heart, a magic circle is a place that you can set aside from the physical world by moving energy in a specific way or with an intention. On a physical level, they just act as places for you to do spiritual work in a focused manner, like setting up your magical office or delineating your workspace, which also means they let you invite only the people or energies you want in and keep uninvited guests out. In more traditional witchcraft, once a circle has been properly hallowed, it acts as a kind of portal to other realms. Think of it like a halfway house or a traveler's rest stop while astral projecting. It's a place that exists in both worlds at once, and when you're inside it, you have one foot in this world and one in the other. Magic circles protect our physical body and give us an anchor through which we can travel to other worlds, engage entities, do energy work, or acquire esoteric knowledge in a grounded way that we can then bring back to our physical body and use for transformation and change. In high ritual magic, that is, the Western tradition, that comes to us from the Greek magical papyri, otherwise known as PGM, when you're working with any kind of spirit, they should all be kind of kept at arm's length. Spirits aren't friendly all the time, and especially if you're calling them and they don't want to come, they do tend to get a little grumpy sometimes. In Western magic, that arm's length is achieved by a magic circle, usually drawn or inscribed on the floor around you. The idea of drawing out a physical boundary or floor circle dates back like 2,500 years and is found in almost every culture around the world. In the Ramayana epic of ancient India, a character called Lakshman draws a circle on the ground to protect his friend Sita from a demon. But Sita is kinda dumb and gets tempted to walk outside, so he's abducted by the demon Ravana. Even the Akkadians and the Babylonians did the whole magic circle thing, and we even have records of something called a surtu, which was a ring of sprinkled lime that would be put around images or statues of gods when the priest was calling them. In more specific magical practice, there's a Sumerian idea called the zisuru, which was basically a circle on the floor that was drawn with flour and water that served exactly the same function. Even Gerald Gardner only incorporated the magic circle into Wicca because he saw it in the Key of Solomon and copied it over. Even though the casting of a circle is super common practice today, especially because it forms such a big part of Solomonic magic and summoning spirits, it actually doesn't appear directly in the PGM, which is really weird because we'd absolutely expect it to. But even if it doesn't appear directly, there's actually still a lot of evidence magic circles did form a part of Egyptian magic, since a lot of rites in the PGM involve moving in a circular motion or doing invocations to different directions as you move around the space. There's some pretty cool linguistic evidence for Egyptians using magic circles too. The Egyptian word for Shinjit comes from the same root as the word Shenu, meaning encircle, which itself also comes to the root of the word Shen, which means to cast a spell or say an incantation. And if that isn't enough, all three of these words are linguistically similar to the word shenet, which means to tie or bind. Couple that with all the depictions of an Ouroboros encircling people on the wall of Tutankhamun's tomb, and the fact that they would always encircle pharaohs' names with cartouche rings to magically protect them. And it seems pretty clear the Egyptians associated this idea of encircling with magic, especially when it came to spirits. So, if a magic circle was so fundamental to Egyptian magic, why wouldn't they write it down? Well, because of just how fundamental it actually was. Remember, the PGM was basically the handwritten collection of a seasoned magician living in Thebes, a guy who was a magical vet, so to speak. So to him, his work was like a recipe book for other magicians who already knew what they were doing. Think of it like a cookbook for high-level chefs. You wouldn't need to include the most basic stuff like how to cook soup or scrambled eggs. You'd include the highly specific details or spices that made the dish special. We see this idea a lot because the PGM will often start rituals by saying, okay, first do the usual, then do all this. So, the use of a magic circle was probably such common knowledge that it was just assumed everyone would already know how to do it. They're such buzzkills. Now, if we fast forward to the 18th century, we see a beautiful grimoire called the Clavis Inferni, and it shows you how to make seemingly the perfect magic circle, and it's pretty typical of the Western tradition. In it, we see an outer edge that is symbolized by an Ouroboros, the sigils of the 4 demon kings that rule the cardinal directions, as well as the names of the 4 archangels who command them, written in the magical script known as crossing the river. The inside of the circle then has a little phrase in Latin that says something to the effect of, I surround myself with these divine names, and the circle is sealed. This is all pretty typical of what we call a Solomonic Circle. You got the outer ring that wards off the spirits, an inner ring where you stand, and in between the two, you'd have some divine or magical names or symbols to empower it. Now, traditionally, you would carve or draw all these things on the floor around you in chalk, paint, ink, or some other magical tool. Or, if you're outside, carve it in the dirt with a ritual knife. But weirdly, the whole divine name thing doesn't appear at all in PGM, since Egyptians believed you needed just as much protection from the gods as you did from the demons. So the fact that all the special names come from the Tetragrammaton, Yod-He, Vod-He, probably came from the Jewish quarter of Alexandria, when the papyri passed through it on their way out of Egypt. You really have 2 schools of thought when it comes to magic circles nowadays. Either people believe the symbols and names have the power in themselves because they're so magical, or they believe you are the one who gives them power through your intention and energy. Either the circle protects you because it is imbued with a magical power and energy by the symbols and names that you inscribe, or it simply acts as a boundary in your mind that defines where you are in relation to the things you're working with. In Western tradition, you may sometimes have a triangle too, which is sort of like a mini magic circle for the spirit you're working with. It's designed to constrain the spirit to one location and force it to tell the truth, since they have a reputation for lying unless you're a bit stern with them. In general, in magical paradigms like this, you'll want to approach spirits like wild horses. In time, you can work with them and guide them if you find them, but they're still wild at heart and will buck or kick every now and then, so you can't be afraid to pull on those reins. Otherwise, you'll get the spiritual equivalent of a kick in the ribs, which, believe me, is the last thing you want. All that said, there's more than one way to create a magic circle. Not all traditions use a circle for the same reasons. nor will everyone view it the same way either. And while magic circles are used for protection in the Western tradition, in traditional witchcraft, they have different purposes. This also means there are tons of different methods for casting one. Like the Western tradition, some of these can be pretty complicated, especially if you're working in a coven with multiple people. On the other end of it though, casting a circle can also be as simple as walking around a space with intention and visualization, or clearing a physical area and then marking it out with sticks, rocks, or, if you're in your house, TV or computer cables. Most traditional witchcraft takes place outside so that you can better connect to nature and the elemental spirits that you usually work with. Hence why a circle is often called a compass, since you're lining it with the natural world and directions and will work with them and the flow of their energies through the landscape. The different types of magic circle will be decided on before you start whatever you're going to do. When it comes to you actually creating the thing, the main ingredient is always the visualization and energy you put into it. If you don't pour out a bunch of energy or do the work with intention, there will be no dimensional or energetic shift, and hence no circle. This is super important to realize. When working in a traditional context, it is not the words or symbols you use that create your circle. Although they'll help, it's actually the effort and energy you expend through concentration and focused visualization that brings it into reality. Equally, feel free to go wild with your imagination sometimes. And while it's often thought that the circle is a flat 2D thing, some paths choose to make it a 3D sphere around you, with roads or paths extending into the cardinal directions. So, experiment and get creative. If you want to really get to grips with creating a magic circle, you can try this method we're about to show you, but feel free to jazz it up as much as you'd like. If you have any magic tools like a staff, wand, or ritual blade, bring them in too. When you arrive at your workplace, whether that's a forest, your backyard, or your bedroom, first determine your compass directions so you know where you're looking. You can start by marking out these directions with something like a rock or a candle. Put your tools in the north, and if you have a staff or a big stick, stick it in the ground there too. Find the general center of your circle and stand there facing north. Take a couple of deep breaths and soak in the energy of where you are. When you are ready, take up your tool and begin to trace the outline of your circle, visualizing a kind of bright, fiery energy coming out the end of your tool and imprinting on the ground as you go. You'll want to start in the north and go clockwise. As you're going, you might want to chant something like vow sounds, divine names, or a little rhyme that helps you focus. Once you're back in the north, replace everything on the floor and begin to walk around the inside edge, holding an intention of bringing the circle to life. You might even want to call to the spirits you work with and ask them to empower the circle. Whether they be elementals, ascended masters, angels, or your personal spirit guides. As you do this, you'll notice the atmosphere around you starts to become a little sticky or heavy, like it's getting denser. That's the point you stop. You can go a step further here and go back to the center and visualize the circle burning around you and feel into a bit more to get it really solid. Once you feel it concretely, you can even visualize roads or lines crossing through your stomach and out into the directions, connecting you to the natural world a bit more. When you're finished doing your work inside the circle, come back to the center and see those lines getting reabsorbed into your body and give thanks to any spirits you've called. If you were specific and called any by name, you should always thank them by name too. Visualize all excess energy and force draining out of the circle and being absorbed by the ground. As you do this, walk around in the opposite direction you did when you made it, saying a little prayer or something to the effect of, "I set aside this circle and end this rite." Engaging with a practice like this can be very rewarding and produce some pretty awesome results. So we would love for you to get involved with it and let us know. Until then, I hope you can use magic circles to gain some clarity and protection in your own practices. Toodles!